Hello and welcome to Solstice season. This is Angeline, and I'm just doing a little podcast here about the winter solstice, what it is, and how it was recognized or is still recognized by the Gabrielino and Chumash of the Los Angeles area in California. The winter solstice throughout the Southwest and even through much of the world in indigenous cultures is extremely important time of the year, maybe even the most ritually important sun time of the year between all solstices and equinoxes. The winter solstice marks a time of year when the sun rises and sets most southerly on the horizon. The days are extremely short, the nights are long, and there is a tension amongst indigenous peoples or prehistoric peoples that the sun may continue its path south and ultimately disappear from the horizon altogether. So at the winter solstice, it's a time for preparation and celebration, honoring the sun and beseeching the sun to return back on its more northerly path up the horizon to make longer days and more heat for people and for crops. At the winter solstice, the sun appears to rise and set for several days at the exact same point on the horizon. This is called the solar standstill at the winter solstice. And again, during this time, it's a cliffhanger because for a few days we're not sure if the sun's going to turn around and grace us with its heat. As well as the sun being an issue, rain is usually associated with this ceremony as well, because both rain and sun are needed for all the things humans need to survive. I was going to do a little, kind of summary of a local ceremony or some local ceremonies here near where I live in Los Angeles, Southern California, but I decided that what I would do is actually read to you from the book called The First Angelinos by William McCrawley, a section about the winter solstice, because I don't need to rewrite what has already been perfectly compiled by McCrawley from a number of archaeological sources. Sorry, you just heard my son shouting in the background. He's running through the house looking for me. Not like he ever needs anything from me at any time other than exactly the moment that I'm trying to do something else. All right, so we're back. Sometime between December 20th and December 23rd, the Winter Solstice Fiesta opened with a conference of the community chiefs. The Antap, when presided over a special meeting, by the way, Antap is a Chumash word, and a lot of the words that I'll be reading are actually Chumashian, but we're describing winter solstice ceremonies that happen in Gabrielino / Chumash territory, more toward the Los Angeles basin, which is Gabrielino. The Chumash, their territory was coastal and more north on the coast, up towards Santa Barbara, but the territories did overlap. So the anthropologists and archaeologists who recorded some of this information in the early days took a lot of sources from the Chumash, so a lot of Chumashian words are used in this description. So we'll proceed. Antap. The Antap then presided over a special meeting in which each individual was required to settle any debts he had accumulated during the year. The Pasha, who acted as the announcer during this meeting, was paid a percentage of each settlement. The main ceremony of the fiesta took place on the afternoon of December 24th. On this day, the Pasha, which by the way, I hope I'm saying that right. It's spelled Paxaa. And I'm using the best I can to pronounce the X. So if you know better and I'm saying that incorrectly, please leave me a message. I'd like to know. Pasha directed the sun stick to ritually pull the sun back from its declining winter course and thereby return the earth to fruitfulness. This is really interesting. A series of these sun sticks were found in a cave, and they're sticks with circular stones affixed to the end of this stick with tar, and sometimes they have a crystal affixed to the top. So the crystal is kind of sitting in the center as the center of a concentric circle, which is the stone, and that's placed at the top of the stick. And if I remember correctly, these sticks are, in this reading it says they're placed perpendicular into the ground, but actually I read more specific description of how these are used, and they're actually placed in leaning at kind of a 17-degree angle, so that the sun penetrates the center of the crystal or the center of the sun stick through the top as it rises. And I've also heard it described that the crystal at the sun stick refracts, if there is a crystal, not all of them have crystals, but the crystal refracts the light from the sun and creates a rainbow. And the rainbow is associated with water and rain and moisture. So by the connection of the rainbow, rain also signifies sun, and sun signifies rain. The two concepts overlap because of the rainbow, and specifically in this case, because of the rainbow that's refracted through the crystal. I always thought that was a really interesting description. So when you hear water equaling sun, think about the rainbow. They're one and the same. Okay, so where were we? Oh, right. So the sun stick pulls the sun back. It's trying to pull the sun from the southerly horizon and bring it back up north for longer days. So in the afternoon, the Pasha removed the sun stick from its wooden storage box and set it in the ground, placing it upright in a hole prepared previously. Again, at a 17-18-degree angle, but that they don't say that here in this book. The Pasha carried the ritual title of shadow image of the Kakunupmawa, the image of the sun. So the Pasha carried the ritual title of shadow image of the sun. Surrounded by his 12 assistants, the Pasha tapped the stone disc twice. As he tapped the disc, the others tossed feathers down into the air and cried, "It is raining, you must go in the house." This was done in imitation of the rainfall, which, it was hoped, would water the wild crops during the upcoming spring. The Pasha then addressed the spectators, exhorting them to heed the wonder of the sun's power and making predictions regarding crops and weather for the upcoming year. The daytime ceremonies concluded with a dance performed by the assistants. Around 8 p.m., the people gathered outside a special ceremonial brush enclosure. Inside the enclosure, the slo'u is by the way, this is a sidebar, I'm not reading. Slo'u is a Chumash word for sky eagle. Sky eagle is also closely associated with the sun. Inside the enclosure, the slo'u sat before a large fire, resting on a stool made of a whale vertebrae and surrounded by his 12 assistants. One by one, members of the congregation came forward to present offerings of seeds, wheat, islay or shell bead money, with each participant following a ritually prescribed sequence of steps when approaching and leaving the enclosure. The completed feather poles were then brought out and carried in a solemn dance that lasted until dawn. Other dances were performed during the night while the participants feasted and tossed offerings into the flames. On this night, the sun was born anew, and in the remaining hours of darkness, moral conventions were set aside and men and women were free to engage in sexual liaisons. Such ritually sanctioned promiscuity was practiced by many peoples in ancient Europe, Central America, Australia, and Africa, and was generally associated with ceremonies to promote fertility in nature. There was little activity the following day, although some dances were performed. In one such performance, 3 men sang, "Come out, son, come out so that you may see your grandfather." 6 women then took up the song while motioning toward the sun with extended arms. That evening, the Dance of the Widows was performed. Recently widowed women or orphaned girls formed a ring around the fire, surrounded by a second ring of men. The dance consisted of hand movements made to the accompaniment of singing and the music of deer hoof rattles. Gabrielino participants from San Fernando are reported to have sung Papu Marata songs, which honored the swordfish at this ceremony. Other songs and dances were held that night as well. There is something else I want to tell you about the swordfish. Let's see if I can find it here. So the swordfish play into the winter solstice ceremony. And here's a little bit about the swordfish in the Chumash custom. The Chumash knew... wait a minute. No, although the swordfish were believed to be malevolent by nature, they benefited mankind by driving whales ashore for people to eat. The Chumash knew swordfish as old men with long beards and wooden swords projecting from their heads. They were believed to live in a crystal house on the ocean floor. The Gabrielino and Chumash sang special songs dedicated to the swordfish at the winter solstice ceremony. These songs were called Papu Marata, which was probably the Gabrielino word for swordfish. So going back to the sunstick for a moment, ethnographer Harrington, many of you, if you're interested in this topic, probably have heard of him before, but one of his Chumash consultants described the sunstick and a little bit about it. The number of these sunsticks were found in a cave called Bowers Cave, and this particular one he's describing is a stone disc 6 inches in diameter, and it's painted green or blue. He's talking about the sunsticks in general, painted green or blue. And again, it's set on the shaft at an angle, like I said, 18 degree angle. A pattern of lines radiating outward from the wooden shaft were painted on top of the disc. A red or black crescent representing the moon was painted on the side. And according to Harrington's Chumash consultant, the shaft of the sunstick was a physical representation of the Earth's axis, and the sandstone disc represented the sun. These sunsticks have been found in Chumash and Gabrielino territory. Like I said, there's borderland between the two. The Chumash are not Euro-Aztecan. The Gabrielino are Euro-Aztecan, as are most of the original indigenous people of all of the Southwest. Now, these sunsticks have been found on Catalina Island, Santa Catalina Island, and elsewhere on the Santa Barbara coast, and again have been claimed to be used by both the Chumash and the Gabrielino. Now, I had a woman from Catalina Island yell at me on the internet saying that the Gabrielino were never on, that the Chumash were never on Catalina Island. She was very, very vehement because I had mentioned that was the case. And she was very vehement that was absolutely not the case. Now, she was not herself Chumash. She was a white lady from somewhere, but she claimed to represent the Chumash in this matter, and that she had spoken to many, and her Chumash friends said, no, that's not true, although they were on Santa Catalina at the time this complaint was being made to me. But prehistorically, apparently, she says, the Chumash were not on Santa Catalina Island. However, their sunsticks have been found on Santa Catalina Island, as well as a number of other, artifacts, and many claims that by archaeologists and researchers that include ethnographic accounts of Chumash being on Catalina Island. So I'm not here to say one way or the other because I wasn't there, but I do know what I've read, and it does seem that at some point the Chumash were on Catalina Island. But certainly the Gabrielino, or another word for them, actually the more proper word for them is the Tongva, were. Okay, so this is just a little sidebar about where people are in this story. And then there was something else I wanted to tell you. Oh yeah, the big fun thing, pictographs. Okay, so Burrow Flats Complex, if you are familiar with these peoples, the Tongva and the Chumash that I've been talking about, you've probably heard of Burrow Flats. It's in a restricted area on private property, and it is a very famous and well-preserved pictograph ceremonial site that's used for both summer solstice and winter solstice. And the most interesting is that I have a description of the interpretation of some of the pictographs in this cave, which I think is particularly interesting considering this is in Tongva territory, which is Uto-Aztecan territory, which is southwest. Therefore, some of these descriptions can be extrapolated to correlate probably with other images like them elsewhere in the Southwest. So I hope that you find this interesting. Pictographs in the Burrow Flats Cave complex there are concentric circles, bird-like creatures wearing tall headdresses, long ladder-like poles rising into the sky, and star-like objects with tails that may be comets. And according to one line of interpretation, these paintings may represent characters and themes from the Gabrielino Chumash mythology. The concentric circles represent sun, and the birds symbolize eagle. And again, as I mentioned before, eagle is very closely associated with sun. The tall ladder-like objects portray the poles erected over chiefs' graves, and comets are omens of the future events. The bird-like creatures may also represent shamans dressed in ritual garb. These interpretations are according to Romani and others in a paper written in 1985 and 1988, and also Edberg paper written in 1985. So, just a little description of what happens in this cave. The paintings are clear and vibrant. A generous rock overhang protects the pictograph panel from sun and rain. Only once a year, for a few days around the winter solstice, does sunlight penetrate the shelter. At that time, a triangle of sunlight formed by a notch in the upper rim of the overhang shines into the shelter, falling upon a series of white concentric circles located at the west end of the panel. This phenomenon was most certainly a central feature of the winter solstice rituals held at the site. And the word "was" here is a little bit misleading because it's my understanding that the site is still used by local natives. So there's a little bit of regional information about the winter solstice that I think is interesting and relevant to the Southwest at large, considering that the Tongva are Uto-Aztecan. Yes, just like, as I said, the original natives of the North American Southwest. So I hope you enjoy this, and I'll get back with you soon because I have a lot more solstice stuff to share with you this year. Have a wonderful day. I make a traditional style of Southwestern art called Huichol bead art. It's pressing tiny glass beads into a mixture of beeswax and pine pitch. And a central motif of this style of art is very similar to the kind of art you find also in petroglyphs and pictographs, where it's this concentric circle, radiating lines, kind of sun glyph. It's because it's the nature of this style of art that you build from the center out, and the center is the point at which the human meets the divine. And the designs that radiate out from that represent whatever natural energy you are making tribute to through your piece of art. It could be a particular animal, it could be the sun, it could be water. Anything that occurs in nature that humans revere show up in this form of art. So it's particularly relevant to this thing we've been talking about today, and I invite you to take a look at my shop. You can link directly to my Etsy shop at etsy.com. Oh, sorry, no, at theancientsouthwest.com, or you can go just straight to Etsy, etsy.com/shop/EyeOfGodArt. And if you enjoy this content, I make it for free because I love the topic. But if you enjoy it and you get something out of it, I would appreciate a follow and a like and a subscribe. But also, if you would like to purchase a piece of art for yourself or for a friend, it would be most appreciated, and you get something for it. It's not just the pleasure of watching a YouTube video, but it's also you receive something that you can keep and that has some meaning to it, that's relevant to this topic we're all interested in. So thank you so much for your kind attention to this little commercial, and thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day.